Hello vets, Rick Seaman here. We're going to run a short 10-minute video clip for you from the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, chaired by Senator Patty Murray. She's going to be questioning Army Surgeon General Patricia Horoho regarding some PTSD cases, about 300 of them over the last several years that have been downgraded and changed. It's pretty serious stuff. Take a look, and we'll let you be the judge. You can email us your opinions of what you think of this hearing. Here we go.
General Horoho, you and I have had a number of discussions about the invisible wounds of war and the challenges soldiers are facing seeking behavioral health care. And as you well know, Madigan Army Medical Center in my home state of Washington is dealing now with how to handle these wounds and provide our soldiers quality, consistent care, especially for our soldiers who are going through the Integrated Disability Evaluation System. Now, I think some of the issues that have been raised at Madigan are unique to that facility, but I do continue to have a number of concerns, not only about the situation at Madigan today, but the implication for our soldiers really across the Army who may have also struggled to get a proper diagnosis, adequate care, and an honest evaluation during the Integrated Disability System process. I wanted to ask you today, prior to 2007, Madigan did not use the forensic psychiatry to evaluate soldiers in the Medical Evaluation Board process, and wanted to ask you for the committee today, why was that system changed in 2007?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. The first thing that I'd like to is just pick up on the word when you said invisible wounds. I know it has been said during this war that the signature wound is an invisible wound. I would submit that it's not invisible to the family, nor is it invisible to the soldier that is undergoing those challenges, behavioral health challenges. The reason, and I'm guessing on this, ma'am, because I wasn't there in, prior to, but prior to 2007, we were a nation that entered into war in about 2001 when we were attacked, in 2002 timeframe. And we had a very old system that was the Med-Hold and Med-Holdover system, which was two separate systems on how we managed those service members, active and reserve component. And that was a system that has been in place for many, many years. And what we found with the large number of deployments and service members that were exposed to physical wounds as well as behavioral health wounds is that we found that the Army system was overwhelmed. And that really is what was found in the 2007 timeframe, is that we didn't have the administrative capability as well as the logistical support that needed to be there, and that's why we stood up our Warrior Transition Units. So we had a large volume going through the disability process that was an old, antiquated process, and we had an overwhelming demand on our Army that we needed to restructure to be able to support and sustain.
But prior to 2007, there wasn't a forensic psychiatry that added an additional level of scrutiny. Correct. Is that correct?
I honestly will need to take that for the record because I don't know in 2006 if they had forensics or not. So I can't answer that question for you. I would like to give you a correct answer. So if I could take that one for the record.
I would appreciate that. And as I mentioned, I am really concerned that soldiers Army-wide have been improperly diagnosed and treated by the Army. What have you found under your investigation of soldiers getting incorrect MEB, PEB evaluations at other facilities?
Ma'am, if I could just, when soldiers are getting diagnosed with PTS or PTSD, we use the same diagnostic tool within the Army, Navy, and the Air Force, which is the same tool that is used in the civilian sector. So it is one standard diagnostic tool that is very well delineated on the types of symptoms that you need to have in order to get a diagnosis of PTS or PTSD. So we are using that standard across the board, and we have been using that standard across the board. So when
we do know now at Madigan there were soldiers that were incorrectly diagnosed. And we're going back through, there's several investigations going on to reevaluate. And my question is, there's been a lot of focus at Madigan. I'm concerned about that system-wide. and you're doing an investigation system-wide to see if other soldiers have been incorrectly diagnosed, correct?
Yes, ma'am. So if I can just lay things out and reiterate some of our past conversations. We have one investigation that is ongoing. Actually, it's completed, and it's with the lawyers that's being reviewed. The Deputy Surgeon General, General Stone, initiated that investigation, and that was to look into
System-wide.
No, ma'am. That's the one at Madigan that's looking at the forensics. Then there's another investigation that was launched by the Western Region Medical Command to look into the command climate at Madigan Army Medical Center. And then what I initiated was an IG assessment, not an investigation, but an assessment that looked at every single one of our military treatment facilities on the provision of care to see whether or not we had this practice of using forensic psychiatry or psychology in the medical evaluation process.
Okay, well, my question was whether you had found at other facilities incorrect diagnosis, and I want you to know that I have asked my Veterans Affairs Committee staff to begin reviewing cases from throughout the country of service members involved in this process, and we are just beginning our review right now, but we have already encountered cases in which a service member was treated for PTSD during their military service, entered the disability evaluation process, and the military determined that the service member's PTSD was not an unfitting condition. So my concern is the significant discrepancy now between the Army's determination and the VA's finding that the soldier had a much more severe case of PTSD. Now, our review on my committee is ongoing, but besides bringing individual cases to your attention, I wanted to ask you, what specific measures do you look at to evaluate whether soldiers are receiving the proper diagnosis and care and honest evaluation?
Okay. It's, we are, within the Army, our role as the physicians is to evaluate the patients, not to determine a disability. So they evaluate and identify a diagnosis and a treatment plan. And then once that is done during the treatment, and if they are determined where they need to go into the disability system, then once they're in the disability system, now because of IDES that occurred in 2010, they now have that evaluation done by the VA, the compensation exam, that's the CMP exam that's done by the VA. And then they are brought back into the disability system. So the physical evaluation board, the PEB, is actually where the determination for disability is made. That is not a medical, that is that's an administrative action that falls under our G1. And so I just want to make sure we don't mix what we do within the medical community in treating and evaluating and what gets done in the disability process. That's an administrative process that is reviewing the evaluation from the VA and then the evaluation from the medical to determine disability.
My concern is that every single soldier who has mental health disability, PTSD, gets the care that they need and that they get the support that they need and they're adequately cared for, whether they leave the service or are sent back overseas or whatever. So we're going to continue to look at the system-wide. And as you know, the problems at Madigan were allowed to go on for years, and I'm really concerned that that lack of oversight over the disability evaluation system is much more broad. And really are going to be following to see what steps you take to ensure that this process is maintained, not just at Madigan where there's a severe focus right now, but nationwide.
And ma'am, what we've done so far since I took over as Surgeon General on the 5th of December, what I've done so far is we're pulling behavioral health up to the headquarters level and making that a service line so that we have one standard of care across all of Army medicine, and we're able then to shift that capability where the demand is. I've got a team that has developed clinical practice guidelines for the use of forensics as well as clinical practice guidelines for implementation of behavioral health capability across Army medicine.
When will that be implemented?
Those are right now being evaluated by the experts. So we've had them written up, and now they're being evaluated, and then we'll get that rolled out probably within the next several weeks.
Okay, so we have two issues. We need to go back and find every soldier that may have not gotten the proper diagnosis and evaluation, and we need to move forward quickly to make sure there is the same diagnostic tool moving nationwide.
Ma'am, right now, we are using the same diagnostic tool as my Air Force and Navy and the civilian sector for evaluating PTSD.
Do you believe we're using the right diagnostic tools?
It's the one standard that's out in the civilian sector as well as the military. It is the best standard that's out there for diagnosing.
Okay, and finally, I just wanted to ask you, in your testimony, you said that you've created a task force within the Army to examine the integrated disability evaluation process in conjunction with the ongoing military health system efforts. What specific aspects of the integrated disability evaluation process are you reviewing?
Yes, ma'am. We did this first from an Army perspective. So prior to General Corelli leaving, we stood up a task force that Brigadier General Line, who is a medical corps physician, Army, that he led that, and that was with FORSCOM, the G1, and as well as Army Medicine. So we had a collaborative process looking at every aspect within the IDES to ensure that we had metrics and as well as standards across implementation throughout the IDES process. After that was done, we then stood up an Army Medicine task force to be able to look at it then a deep dive from the medical piece that we're responsible for. Brigadier General Williams led that task force. It was functional and capability individuals with multiple capabilities sat on that. And what we want to do is to be able to launch our standards across so that we have no variance in every place that we have soldiers that are going through the IDES process. Army is getting ready to put out an ALARAC message Army-wide with the standard that will be going out, I think, in the April timeframe. And then ours will be ready. We're ready now. As soon as the Army launches that, we'll be able to put our standards in that impacts our medical care.
When will this be complete?
Ma'am, it will start, right now we're looking at starting that in the April timeframe and the rollout of those standards across. And so I can get back with you on how long that would take.
Okay,
But
I'd really
I can tell
appreciate
you
that.
that my full focus is ensuring that we do have a system, and I believe that everyone is focused on caring for our warriors. We're very committed to that. And we're looking at everywhere where we have variance so that we can decrease that variance and be able to ensure that we have one standard across Army medicine.
Well, thank you very much.